If you keep saying, "I'm fine," when you're not, this is slowly catching up with you. You've probably seen that person who walks in smiling, laughs the hardest in the room, checks on you before you even finish saying hello, and looks like they truly have their life in order. And maybe, just maybe, that person is me. I share the best moments. I automatically say, "I'm good." I keep it together at work, at dinner, at that family gathering I didn't even want to attend. Then I come home, shut the door, and just sit there. Quiet. And this is where it starts to feel different. A bit empty, like I've been putting on a show all day, and now it's finally over. Does that hit close? Because most people never notice this part. When people see someone who always seems okay, they usually think one of two things. Either they really are okay, good for them, or they're pretending. Superficial, distant. But that's not the real story. People tend to believe that those who always say, "I'm good," just don't feel things that deeply. Like they're just moving through life without much going on underneath. But that assumption misses what's actually happening. Because psychology shows something very different. The ones who seem the most okay are often carrying the heaviest load. And that smile isn't emptiness, it's protection. And it didn't start recently. Learning to use that protection usually begins long before adulthood. If any of this feels a little too familiar, if I've ever caught myself saying, "I'm fine," while meaning the opposite, this isn't about calling myself out. It's about understanding what led to it. Because there is always a reason. And it's usually more human than it seems. So today, I'm breaking down the psychology of people who feel unhappy inside, but act like they're fine. And here's the part most people miss. What's really behind it? What does it cost? And what does it quietly reveal about who I am beneath all that control? Because this doesn't just stay on the surface. Here's the truth. Most people don't wake up one day and decide to hide their feelings. It builds over time. So gradually, that it's hard to notice. At some point, I learned that showing negative emotions didn't help. It made things worse, and that's where the pattern starts. Maybe I cried as a kid and was told to toughen up. Maybe I tried opening up and felt like I was too much. Maybe the emotional support I needed just wasn't there. Not because anyone meant harm, but because the people around me didn't know how to respond. And that changes how you deal with everything. So I adjusted. I realized, whether I knew it or not, that keeping things light made things feel safer. That being easygoing, low maintenance, relaxed, and capable made people stay. And it works, at least for a while. And over time, that way of coping turned into a habit. This ties directly into what psychologists call attachment theory. It explains how the emotional patterns we form as kids to stay connected to caregivers carry into adult life. And this is where it gets deeper. If I had to hide my feelings to stay close, or if being vulnerable pushed people away instead of bringing comfort, I likely developed what's known as an avoidant attachment style. And one of the clearest signs of that is telling people, "I'm fine," when I'm not. Because somewhere deep down, learned over time, vulnerability feels unsafe. But that's only part of what's going on. Underneath the attachment patterns, there's something even more personal at play. Identity protection. For many people who hide their unhappiness, being okay isn't just something they do socially. It becomes part of how they see themselves. And once that happens, it's hard to step out of it. The strong one, the dependable one, the one who never breaks down. And here's where it gets more complicated. If my identity is built on being steady and in control, then admitting I'm struggling doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels like losing who I am. And that's where it starts to wear you down. So I keep up the act not to fool others, but because I don't even know who I am without holding everything together. And that pressure builds quietly over time. And that kind of pressure is exhausting. Think about it. Every interaction turns into a performance. Every How are you needs a quick decision, and it never really stops. I watch my expressions, control my tone, make sure nothing slips, because once it does, everything feels exposed, all while carrying what's really going on inside. The loneliness in that is hard to put into words. And this is the part most people never see, because even when I'm around people, even people who care about me, I can still feel completely invisible. Not because people don't care, but because I've become so skilled at hiding where they should even look. And once you get good at that, it's hard to stop. And honestly, I should give credit where it's due. People who live this way are often some of the most emotionally intelligent, perceptive, and deeply feeling individuals in any room. I notice when others are struggling before anyone else does. That's not accidental. I'm the one who checks in, listens without judgment, and holds space in a way that feels almost instinctive. And over time, that becomes second nature. I've developed a kind of emotional fluency that comes from years of paying close attention to what's happening inside. That level of awareness doesn't come easily. That's not nothing. That's a real and valuable quality, but there's a cost to it. It just often gets buried under the weight of not directing that same care inward. And this is where things start to shift, and American culture doesn't make this any easier. Let's be honest. We live in a culture that constantly rewards people for appearing like they have everything together. And it reinforces this pattern every single day. Social media makes it seem like everyone is out there living their best life, building something, traveling somewhere, improving themselves. And when you see that constantly, it starts to shape how you show up. Hustle culture tells me that struggle is something to push through, not sit with. Even in everyday conversation, I'm great, super busy, loving it, is the expected response. Nobody is really waiting for the honest answer. And this is where it gets dangerous. So, if I'm already wired to hide how I feel, the culture gives me constant reasons to keep doing it. Picture this. It's a Tuesday night. I'm sitting on the couch, phone in my hand, half watching something on TV. The room is quiet. Everyone I know thinks I had a good day. I text back with the right emojis, and everything looks normal from the outside. I laughed at the right moments, but there's this low, dull weight sitting somewhere in my chest that I can't quite name, and this is the part that stays with you. And instead of asking what it is, I scroll a little more, put on another episode, and eventually fall asleep, hoping tomorrow feels lighter. That moment, that exact moment, that's what this is really about, and it happens more often than people admit. But sometimes, there's something heavier underneath all of this. And this is where it goes deeper. Sometimes, I'm fine isn't just a social habit, it's a symptom. And ignoring it has consequences. Chronic emotional suppression is closely linked to depression, anxiety, and burnout. And the dangerous thing about high-functioning depression, especially, is that it's invisible, even to the person experiencing it. And that's what makes it so easy to miss. I can hold a job, maintain friendships, show up, and still be quietly drowning. And nobody notices. If any of this resonates at that level, it's worth paying attention to, because this doesn't fix itself. So here's the real question worth sitting with. Am I saying I'm fine because I genuinely am and I just need some space? Or am I saying it because somewhere along the way, I stopped believing anyone could handle the real answer? And that answer matters more than you think. I'm not broken for doing this. I'm not weak. And there's a reason this pattern exists, and I'm definitely not fake. I developed a coping strategy that made sense given what I experienced. And that deserves understanding, not judgment, including from myself. People like this are usually deeply thoughtful, almost hyper-aware of other people's emotions, and quietly sensitive in ways they rarely show. And that's why others rely on me. I'm often the backbone of my social circle, the one who holds everything together. I just rarely let anyone do the same for me, and that imbalance builds over time. Psychologists sometimes call this emotional masking, the ongoing process of experiencing an emotion internally while deliberately concealing it outwardly. And it doesn't come without a cost, and research consistently shows it takes a real toll on mental health, on relationships, and eventually on the body itself. And this is where people start to feel it. So, I'm genuinely curious. Because this is more common than it seems. Do I recognize this in myself? Or do I know someone who fits this description? If this hit, don't ignore it. Drop it in the comments. I might be surprised how many people are reading this and feeling the exact same thing. And that's the part most people don't expect. If I'm interested in understanding the hidden psychology behind everyday behavior, why people do what they do and feel what they feel, I should subscribe, because this is exactly what we break down every week.